Hello everyone. Today we will solve problem set 9. Let's start. First question asks us explain the impact on following events on the money market equilibrium and the equilibrium interest rate using graphical analysis. It asks us decrease in the discount rate. So if there is a decrease in the discount rate, it means central bank want to encourage banks to take additional loans so they can increase their reserves. With more reserves, banks will make more loans and the money supply will increase. So our money supply curve is vertical like this, and our money demand curve is like this. If the money supply increases, it will shift to the right like this, and we will have a new equilibrium point because we have the same money demand curve. So when the money supply increases, we will be in this point, and this point means we have a lower interest rate and the quantity of money increase. Let's look at the second question. It asks us if there is an increase in the minimum reserve requirement ratio, what will happen? So if central bank increases the reserve ratio, so the banks can lend a lower percent of their loanable reserves, which means it will decrease the money supply. So the money supply curve will shift to the left like this. Again, we have the same money demand curve, so the new equilibrium point will be this, and it means we have a increased interest rate and quantity of money decreases. Let's look at the, I'm sorry, let me, okay. It says central bank sells government bonds in the private financial markets. What does it mean? So if central bank sells bonds, it means money supply decreases because it sells bonds and it gets money from people because it sells and that means money supply decreases. So money supply curve again will shift to the left like this, and again we have the same money demand curve. Our new point is here. Interest rate increases, the quantity of money decreases. So if central bank sells bonds, it will decrease the money supply. You can remember that. So in the second question, we have, let me do this like, okay, it will be better, okay. So the commercial bank in Europe lands have the following assets and liabilities. So total reserves, loans, deposit, and total assets, we know these. And construct the commercial bank's balance sheets. If there are any missing assets and liabilities, call them other assets and other liabilities. So assets, we have total reserves. Let me use a pen. We have total reserves, loans, we know these. And for liabilities, we have deposits. So liabilities and assets should be equal to each other. So let's calculate. So our total reserves is equal to 500 million and loans is equal to 2,000 million. So if we add them up, we have 2,500 million dollars. But it gives us the information that total assets is equal to 4,000 million. So we need to have 1,500 million other assets, because we need it. They need to sum up to 4,000. So we write other assets, and it is equal to 1,500. So if total assets is equal to 4,000, total liabilities should be equal to 4,000 too. So we know the deposits is equal to 3,000. So we need to have 1,000 other liabilities, because the sum up should be equal to 4,000. So let's look at the second part. Calculate the commercial bank's reserve ratio. How we calculate reserve ratio? Reserve ratio is basically reserves divided by deposits. So reserves was total reserve was 500 million, and deposits was 3,000 million. So if we divide them to each other, we will find 0.16, and it means 16%. So if the reserve ratio that we found in part 2 is equal to the required reserve ratio, calculate the simple money multiplier. What does it mean? If the reserve ratio is equal to required reserve ratio, it means we don't have any excess reserve. So we can easily use this formula to calculate the multiplier, money multiplier. So for R, we use the reserve ratio we found in part 2. So if you look, it means 1 minus 1 plus R. So once sum up to 0, so we just have R. 1 divided by R, R is 0.16, so the multiplier is equal to 6.25. So the crucial part in this question is the required reserve ratio is equal to the reserve ratio, so there's no excess reserve. The important point is that. So it asks us in the third question, illustrate the following situation using supply and demand curves for money. So if there's the first question asks us, during a recession, the central bank buys bonds in the open market. So let's look. So if central bank buy bonds, it will increase the money supply. So our money supply curve will shift to the right. As also in the question, let's look again. It says there is a recession. So I'm sorry. Let me. Okay. Okay. So again, if there is a recession, money demand curve will shift to the left. So again, our money demand was this. It shift to the left. So new, let me use another color. New curves, new money supply curve is this one, and new money demand curve is this one. So you need to remember that if central bank buy bonds, money supply will increase. If there's a recession, money demand curve will shift to the left because there's a recession. We learned that before. Okay. The second question asks us, during a period of rapid inflation, the central bank increases the reserve requirement ratio. So there's a inflation, and central bank increases the reserve requirement ratio. Let's look. When there is a rapid inflation, the money demand curve will shift to the right. So our money demand curve was this one. It will shift to the right. So the new money demand curve is this. And if the central bank increases the reserve requirement ratio, so it will decrease the money supply. We talked about this before, because let me show you again. In this question, we talk about this. Let me go back to this point. Okay. In the B part, it has increased the minimum reserve requirement ratio. So we talk about this. When central bank increases the reserve ratio, commercial banks can let a lower percent of their loanable reserves. That's why money supply decreases. So again, in this question, central bank increases the same ratio. That's why money supply decreases. And because of the inflation, money demand increases. So our new, let me use my new money supply is this, and new money demand is this. So let's look at the third one. During a period of high inflation, central bank acts to hold interest rate constant. So now, before the interest rate was changing, but now central bank wants to hold the interest rate constant. So when there's a high inflation, money demand curve will shift to the right. Let me draw the graph from scratch in here. So we have let me use another color. We have money supply and money demand curve. Then we wrote money supply and money demand. So the purpose in here to hold the interest rate constant. So our interest rates, the intersect point of money supply and money demand. So here is our interest rate. So when there is a high inflation, our money demand will shift to the right. So the new money demand curve will be this. So if you look at the new intersection point, the interest rate will be in here. But we want to keep it constant. So central bank needs to do something to go back to this interest rate. What should central bank do? It should increase the money supply. Why? Because if central bank increases the money supply, let's say let me yes. If the central bank increases the money supply, let me use this. Okay, this is a new money supply. Let's look at the intersection point of new money supply curve and new money demand curve. It is again here. So it is the same interest rate. So if central bank wants to hold the interest rate constant, it should increase the money supply. So money supply curve shift to the right. During a period of no growth of GDP and zero inflation, the central bank lowers the discount rate. So if there is no growth of GDP and zero inflation, we don't have a shift in money demand curve. If central bank lowers the discount rate, it encourages banks to borrow, so it will increase the money supply. So only the money supply curve shift to the right, like in here. Let's look the fifth question. So during a period of rapid growth of real GDP, the central bank acts to increase reserve requirement ratio. So if there is a rapid growth of the real GDP, money demand curve will shift to the right, like in here. This is our new money demand curve. And if central bank increases the reserve requirement ratio, it will decrease the money supply. So our money supply curve will shift to the left. So now we have a new money demand and money supply curve. Let's look at the question 4. So we have assets and liabilities. We have reserves, securities, loans, and property, and they are equal to 400,000. And liabilities are deposit and stock shares, and they also need to be equal to 400,000 because total assets and total liabilities need to be equal. So let's look what the question asks us. So if bank has no excess reserve currently, what is the required reserve ratio? So how we calculate required reserve ratio? We divide reserves by deposits. So let's look at the table again. Let me do this so we can see both. Oh, we cannot. So let me. Okay. So reserves was 20,000 and deposit was 80,000. So if we divide them, we will find it is 25%. So it asks us in the third part, suppose a person who was keeping 2,000 of his banknotes at home deposits decides to keep them at the commercial bank. Calculate the amount of new money created, change in deposits, change in currency in circulation, and change in money supply as a consequence of this new deposit of 2,000. So first, this person once decide to keep them at the commercial bank. He has $2,000. So we just found the required reserve ratio. So first we need to multiply 2,000 by required reserve ratio, and we will find, let me use my pen, 500, it is required reserves. So banks need to hold it and cannot do anything with that money. It should be stay like this. So we have $2,000. The 500 of it is required reserve. So if we subtract 500 from 2000, we will find 1,500. It is excess reserves. So the new money creation, how we calculate, it is, we will find it from this formula. So let me, okay. So our R was equal to 0.25. We find it in here. So 1 divided by 0.25 is equal to 4. And our excess reserve is 1,500. So if we multiply them, we will find 6,000. So it is new money creation. So change in deposits, it is initial increase in deposits, which is 2,000, because he wants to keep his 2,000 at the commercial bank, and created deposit, which is 6,000. If we sum them up, we will find it is 8,000 change in deposits. Change in currency in circulation. His 2,000 was in the was a currency in circulation, so he decided to keep them at the bank. So there is a minus $2,000 that decrease in the currency in circulation. So minus 2,000. Change in money supply, it is equal to change in deposit plus change in currency in circulation. So change in deposit, we just found it is 88,000, and the change in currency circulation, it is, we just found minus 2,000. So if we sum them up, we will find 6,000. Let's look at the fourth option. It says us to return to the information at the beginning of the question and the balance sheet of the bank in part E. If the required reserve ratio is 20%, calculate the amount of excess reserves and excess reserve ratio of the bank. So before we found that, I'm sorry, okay, we found if there is no excess reserves, required reserve ratio was 25%. But now we have excess reserves, so it wants us to calculate the amount of excess reserve and excess reserve ratio. How we calculate? We know our deposits are equal to 80,000, and the new reserve ratio is 20%. So if we multiply them, we will find the new required reserves. So they are equal to 60,000. We already know our reserves is equal to 20,000. If we subtract the new required reserves out of reserves, we will find the excess reserves. They are equal to 4,000. And if you divide excess reserves by deposits, you will find the excess reserve ratio of the bank. So it is 5%. The question 5 asks, suppose the economy is in recession with a real GDP below its long-run equilibrium. Which policy does central bank carry out in order to bring the economy to its long-run equilibrium? List the policy tools that central bank can use. So let's look. So it says we are in recession. So this point is full employment, full potential employment point. So this is potential output. Because we are in the recession, our output level is less than the full potential employment level. So we are in here right now, initially. So to reach this point, central bank needs to carry out expansionary monetary policy. That means central bank needs to increase the money supply and decrease the interest rates. Why? We need to shift the aggregate demand curve to the right. So if central bank lowers the interest rate, it will increase the consumptions and investments. So we can shift the AD curve to the right. So if the AD curve shifts to the right, we will be in the point B, and it is the long run equilibrium point. So both GDP increases because now we are here, and both prices because we were initially in this price, now we are in this price. How can central bank increases money supply? What are the tools that it can use? Open market operation. It can buy bonds. If central bank buy bonds, it will increase the money supply. If central bank lower the reserve requirement ratio, the money supply will increase. Or if central bank lower the discount rate, it will encourage the banks to make more loans. So again, it will increase the money supply. Let's look at the question 2. Firms are producing beyond the normal capacity. The real GDP is greater than potential GDP, and the economy experiences rising wages and prices. Which policy does central bank need to carry out in order to reach its goal of price stability and bring the economy to its long-run equilibrium? List the policy tools that central bank can use. Let's look. So we are producing more than the potential level, so we are in point E right now. We need to be in this point to reach the long run equilibrium, the potential level. So we need to shift the AD curve to the left. How we can do this? Central bank needs to decrease the money supply and increase the interest rate to shift the AD curve to the left, because if there is an increased interest rate, consumption and investments will decrease and the AD curve will shift to the left. How central bank can do this? What are the tools that central bank can use? Central bank can sell bonds. It will decrease the money supply. It can increase the reserve requirement ratio. Again, it will decrease the money supply. Or it can raise the discount rate, so it will be harder for the banks to borrow from the central bank. So again, it will decrease the money supply. Let's look at the part B, multiple choice question. The statement, my iPhone is worth $900, represent the money's function as a unit of account because it's denominated in terms of money and currency. So the correct answer is option. Question 2, money is an asset that people are willing to accept in exchange for goods and services. It's basically a definition, so I'm passing to the third one. Again, it's a definition. Liquidity is defined as the ease which a given asset can be converted to a medium of exchange. So let's look at the question 4. If a person withdraws 500 from his or her savings account and puts it in his or her checking account, then let's look. So person withdraws $500 from his savings and puts it to his checking account. So M1 is equal to currency in circulation plus checking account. So if this person puts it $100 to his checking account, M1 will increase. But this person withdraws this money from his saving account. So M2 is also equal to M1 plus small denomination time deposit plus saving deposit plus money market deposit accounts. So this person withdraws this money from saving deposits, so and puts it to checking accounts. So M2 consists of both saving accounts and checking accounts. So this money withdraws from one of them and puts it to the other one. So M2 doesn't change because it consists of the both accounts. So if a person withdraws $500 from his or her checking account and holds it as currency, so M1 and M2 is also consist of currency in circulation. So if this person withdraws this money from the checking account and holds it at currency, so checking account is minus 500 and currency circulation is plus 500, and M2 is equal to M1 plus the other deposits. So these M1 and M2 don't change because they are equal to currency in circulation plus checking account. So this person just withdraws money from checking account and save it as currency in circulation. So there's nothing changed for M1 and M2. So let's continue. So please answer the next two questions referring to the table below. It gives us information of these balances. And M1 in this economy equals to, so let's look, M1 is equal to currency and checking account balances. So 1,000 plus 2,000, it equals to 3,000. And M2 in this economy equals to currency and checking account balances. So currency plus checking out balances plus saving account balances plus small denomination time deposit plus non-institutional money market fund shares. So it equals to the sum of all. So it's equal to 21,000 dollars. So which of the following best describes how banks create money? So banks create checking account deposits when making loans from excess reserve. It is the best description. Which of the following is an asset for a bank? It is loans. Question 10, if there is an increase of 1,000 in the bank reserves when the required reserve ratio is 10%, then the change in deposit must be. So how we calculate required reserve ratio? We divide reserves by deposits, and it was equal to required reserve ratio. So if there's a increase in bank reserves, which is 1,000. Let me write this. We can easily find the change in deposits. How we know this is, let me use another color. This one, that's not a good color. Let me use this, okay. We know this is the change in reserves is equal to 1,000. So if we divide 1,000 by 0.10, we will find the change in the deposits, which is equal to 10,000. The option A. Let's look at the other question. So, okay. Which of the following is not one of the tools available to central bank for changing money supply? So central bank can change the required reserve ratio, it can change the discount rate or engage open market operation, which is buying or selling bonds, but it cannot change the interest rate. So option C is the right one. Contradictionary monetary policy on the part of the central bank results in a decrease in the money supply. So if there's a decrease, there will be increase in the interest rate and decrease in the GDP. Let me show you in a graph to make it more clear. So this is our graph. This is the money supply, and let me use another color. This is the money demand curve. So if central bank implements a contradictionary monetary policy and decrease the money supply, let me use another color again. So our new money supply curve is this. We were in this point before. Let me get this color. We were in this point, but now we're in this point. So this is interest rates, and this is Y. So the Y, so real, there's a decrease in the GDP, and also before our interest rate was this one, now it is this one. So our interest rate increases. So let's look. Expansionary monetary policy on the part of the central bank results in the opposite of what we did before. Again, let's show it. So this was our money supply curve. This was our money demands. And if central bank implements expansionary monetary policy, our money supply will shift to the right. And this one was our interest rates in here, but now the intersect point of money supply and money demand is here, so interest rate decreases and GDP increases. So option C. So let's look at this last question. In the figure below, the movement from point A to point B in the money market will be caused by. So we were in point A to point B, and we see that money supply decreases because it shifts to the left. How? An open market sale of treasury securities by central bank. If central bank implements an open market sale, it will decrease the money supply because it sells bonds. So that's why money supply will shift to the left, and we will be in point B. So that's all. If there is something you don't understand, you can always send an email, or you can always join to the office servers. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.